Mr. Chairman, we are now recording the meeting and streaming live to YouTube. You can begin when you're ready.
Thank you and good morning again. Welcome to this Metro Plan Orlando CAC meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I am Jeffrey Campbell and I will be chairing the meeting today. This meeting is fully in person, so all committee members have been asked to be present here in the Metro Plan Orlando boardroom. However, we will still have virtual participation for the public. I'll ask all committee members to please speak clearly and use your microphone so that those joining us virtually will be able to hear. It is now time for our Pledge of Allegiance, and today I will ask again our Vice Chair, Dr. Dan Stevens.
My pleasure. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Stevens. Okay, there are two public comment points in the meeting. Members of the public who are here in person and would like to make a comment should submit a speaker card to Miss Rachel Fredericks. Almost said a different name. Those attending on Zoom who want to speak can use the raise hand feature on Zoom screen. We also accepted comments by email before the meeting. We have a packed agenda today. Okay, so we're going to have to move through the meeting expeditiously. Okay, so I'll ask you if you have questions that we can't get through, we will make sure they get answered. We'll just ask you to please submit them to Ms. Mary Ann Horner. We will get an answer for you. Okay. At the June Metro Plan Orlando board meeting, I shared with the board some of the CAC's questions about I-4 truck stop parking and especially the electric vehicle charging stations. I hope you all had time to review the information that came from Mr. Jonathan Scarf from FDOT. He passed along regarding the truck stop and about the FDOT charging station infrastructure master plan. Okay. I'm going to move on with it. So at this point, I'm going to ask Ms. Mary Ann Horn to go ahead and give us our agenda review.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members and all those attending both in the room and online, thank you for being with us today. In this format, we need a quorum, which is now 16 members in the room to conduct votes. As always, it is important to RSVP for these meetings so that we can prepare. There are still Zoom and YouTube options available for the public. Today's safety moment is being moved to later in the agenda. It's also being expanded to more like a safety 10 to 15 moments. And it's being presented by a special guest, Ms. Laureen Bobo of FDOT, instead of by our Metro Plan Orlando staff. And she's going to give us some compelling information about distracted driving. So that will be interesting. You may have noticed a new name in your inbox this month. Ms. Rachel Frederick. Rachel, can you give us a wave? Has joined our staff, and she is quickly getting up to speed in her role as board services coordinator, replacing Kathy Goldfarb. She's doing a great job. She will be your main board services contact for CAC related matters. So if you have not already stopped by to introduce yourself, please do so. Help her start putting names with faces. I wanted to bring to your attention, as if you hadn't already seen it, these posters that are at your place. These are provided to us from Rethink Your Commute. Mr. Brendan Guess over there brought these as gifts. They are yours to take home, to take a picture of. If you don't want to take it, you can leave it. We'll use it again. But he wanted to let you know that they have these available, and that they are going to be doing a series with the same artists of different modes of travel. So it's going to be interesting to follow. If you don't already follow Rethink on social media, you might want to do that just to see these gorgeous images. I also want to point out that any of you who like to attend or tune into the Metro Plan Orlando board meetings, please note that the July meeting, July 12th meeting, will start at 8 a.m. This is a temporary time change to accommodate some other local government meetings. So that's 8 o'clock instead of their normal 9 o'clock. We will also have something special in store for August, so I hope you can be there, be here. Remember, we do not meet in July. The active transportation plan has been moving ahead with ideas for projects through the year 2050. So we're building on the success of the workshop that we had last fall that many of you participated in. and planning a similar workshop at our August 23rd meeting. The team has identified potential project opportunities and they want your feedback, so please come prepared to give it. I know you will. There are no changes to the printed agenda, other than please note, we do not have a bike and ped report from Mr. Mike Wilson. He is on vacation. And now I will turn it back to Ms. Rachel Frederick, who will call the roll.
Good morning. Battler, Bobinger, Bolton, Bosley,
Present.
Buttery, Campbell,
Present.
Cintron Medina, Coleman, Coloca Masso, Colon, Council, Davis, El Badri, Gus, Henry, Lopez,
Here.
Mormon,
Here.
Mott,
Present.
Mueller,
Present.
Niesman,
Present.
O'Hanlon, Herrera, Peters,
Present.
Pigram, Pizzo,
Present.
Rump,
Yes, here.
Salas, Shaw, Sabila,
Present.
Stevens,
Present.
Webster,
Present.
White.
Rachel, I believe Mr. Cintron Medina has just joined us.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, that completes the roll call. We do not have a quorum.
Okay, I think we're probably one shy of having a quorum at this point. But what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and move through the action items as discussions. And then as soon as the next person come in, we'll have a quorum. I'm being positive.
There are a
Okay.
few.
So, and then we'll back up into to ratify those particular items, okay? The first item, we have 3 action items. The first item is, well, actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. At this point, we will now hear public comments on action items. Do we have anyone here that would like to speak to any of these items? If so, please use the raise hand function on the screen or press *9 on your phone keypad. When your name is called, the host will unmute you microphone. You will see a button that pops up, says the host wants to unmute you. Accept the prompt to activate the microphone. We'll ask that you provide your name and address for the record, and please hold your comments to 2 minutes. Are there any comments at this point?
On the virtual side, there are no hands that are raised
Okay.
for public comments.
Okay. Do we have anyone present in the boardroom today who wish to make a comment on action items?
Mr. Chair, I believe we did not receive any speaker cards, nor did we receive any emails in advance.
Okay, very good. See, staying positive. We just had the 16th person walk in. How about that? Thank you, Ms. Council. Okay, so now our first action item is the approval of our minutes from our May 24th meeting. So I will entertain a motion and a second for those.
I'll second it. Dan
Okay.
Stevens.
Any further discussion? Any concerns? Okay, hearing none, motion carries. Thank you again. Next, we're looking for approval of the we are looking for the consideration of recommendation for the adoption of the new transportation improvement program. Mr. Jason Satorio is here to give us a preview. He gave us this information before. We even had a follow-up response from FDOT with responses to questions that were not answered. So we ought to be able to get through this. Mr. Satorio, the floor is yours.
Morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. This morning I will be presenting the fiscal year 2023-2024, the fiscal year 2027-2028 draft tip for adoption. In your agenda packets, you will find a link to the document. Little background on the tip. The tip identifies all federal and state funded transportation projects the next 5 years, includes locally funded projects and Central Florida Expressway projects for informational purposes, and it is updated on an annual basis. Projects in the tip are identified within 11 sections. Since the draft presentation, Central Florida Expressway Authority projects have been added to the toll road section of the tip. And overall, we have 526 projects within the 11 sections of the tip. So as you can see, we have a lot of transportation projects going on in the region over the next 5 years. We have a total of 312 federal, state, and turnpike funded projects with an estimated 4.1 billion in funding. And based on our region's significant population size, we received additional federal funding, which we can use for off-system state highway system projects. And within the tip, we have a total of 49 Metroplan Orlando funded projects with an estimated 147 million in funding. And the pie chart breaks this down by category. On June 21st, 2023, we hosted a virtual public meeting on Zoom from 11:30 to 1. We had 129 people register and 62 attend. We also had 93 views on the tip meeting recording posted to our YouTube channel so far. As in years prior, we are anticipating that number will continue to increase as people find the time to watch the recording. And some topics of questions and comments included transit needs in the region, desire to connect trail networks, bicycle and pedestrian safety, and Orange County and City of Orlando specific projects. With that being said, unless there are any questions, we are asking for your recommendation of approval of the fiscal year 2023-24 to fiscal year 2027-28 tip. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
And Lopez was second.
Okay. We have a first and we have a second. Any further discussion? Questions? Okay, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposes? Motion carries. Thank you so much.
Looking good.
All right. Okay, next, we're considering the recommendation for adoption of the new prioritized project list, PPL. Mr. Slade Downs of Metroplan Orlando staff is here to provide more information. Mr. Downs previewed this plan for us at our last meeting. Mr. Downs, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. There we go. For the record, Slade Downs, transportation planner here at Metroplan Orlando. I'll be walking you through the final draft of the prioritized project list. So quick recap, the ins and outs of the PPL plan is updated annually. It links projects from the 25-year plan, that is the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, to the Transportation Improvement Program. I know you just got another quick run through of the tip from Jason, so won't dwell on that too much, but all that is to say is that the tip focuses on the next 5 years of our projects, and then the PPL is the decade following the tip. So these are the funding programs and priority list in the PPL. Each one has a one sheet that explains the ins and outs of those programs, as well as a detailed project list table cataloging the different projects. The PDF of the prioritized project list is linked in your agenda as well as on our website. So you can reference the full document there if you'd like. So at our last meeting, I gave you a deep dive on the PPL and asked for input and feedback. We received some questions from some of our partners and committee members on general PPL process, as well as the new critical sidewalks gap critical sidewalk gaps program, as well as some specific project questions from the priority lists. A perfect example comes from someone sitting right here at this table, Mr. Dan Stevens, Dr. Dan Stevens, excuse me, who during our last meeting pointed out a redundancy in one of the sidewalk bundles listed in the project tables. And sure enough, we went in and looked, and that project, that segment of sidewalk had been filled in since we did the analysis. So that was the exact kind of feedback we were looking for. So thank you. And this is kind of very typical of the type of comments we received as feedback. During that feedback round, we also received some project updates from some of our partners. Some projects had been completed independently of us or otherwise funded, so we were able to remove those projects from the list. And kind of the long and short of it is that no changes were made to project rankings in the comment period. So with that, keeping it short and sweet, I'm requesting that you all make a recommendation to approve the PPL for 2028 through 2038. And we'll pass that recommendation along to the board very bright and early on July 12th. That, thank you. You have taken
Thank you,
questions.
Mr. Downs. Okay, question? Okay, we have Mr. O'Hanlon with the first and Ms. Council with the second. Questions, discussions? Mr. O'Hanlon. Your microphone.
I will vote for it because I don't want to spend the time to do the roll call vote because I know how it's all going to turn around. I will lose. But I am vehemently against spending a dime for dinosaur technology of buses and trains. If you want to put in there, order 1,000 robo buses, great, I'm all for it. But I just don't want to spend any more money on dinosaur technology that no one's going to use because it costs 50 to 100 times more to operate than robo buses.
Okay,
Thank you.
any other comments over here? Everyone's good? Okay, then I'll turn this way. Everyone good? Okay, good. Okay, at this point, we'll ask for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposes? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That moves us to our presentations. We have 4 presentations today. If you have a question for the presenter, please turn your name card on the end so that we know that you'd like to ask a question. We will call on those who have questions at the end of the presentation. Our first presentation is an update on the federal grant and regions recently received for a Vision Zero program. Mr. Alex Trager of Metro Plan Orlando staff will share the information. Mr. Trager, you have our attention.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
All right, so I'm going to be in the past 6 months or so, you've probably heard presentations from Taylor Durrent from our team, as well as Mike Wilson about the successful grant application for Vision Zero action planning that our region received. A little background on that, we applied as a region, 3 counties, all of our municipalities, and us as a metropolitan planning organization. And as a region, we were awarded $3.79 million to conduct and prepare Vision Zero action plans for ourselves and for all of our municipal partners. That's kind of the focus of the work that's going to be taking place really through the next 12 to 18 months. That's so really through this fiscal year and going into the next. But obviously, as you know, given our region's safety challenges, we have a long road ahead of us. But I think the positive news here and what's up, what we haven't presented in the past is the status of the grant. And we have a fully funded grant agreement approved by the United States Department of Transportation and Federal Highway Administration. And that's really what my team has been working on, making sure that we can unlock those funds so we can start the reimbursement and planning process come in the next fiscal year. Similarly, as it relates to kind of the logistics of the grant, our board approved the local match as part of their budget amendment at their last board meeting. So we are all teed up as it relates to hitting the ground running come July 1. So I'm going to walk you through some of the key steps and how we're going to go about doing that work, knowing that over the next 10 meetings or so of this group, you're going to be hearing a lot more about Vision Zero action planning and what that means to Metro Plan, but also to your municipalities back home. So a key element of Vision Zero action planning is establishing a Vision Zero task force. A couple years ago, we formed our vulnerable users working group, which kind of started the process of exploring, topics of safety, especially for our most vulnerable users. And they were key to actually preparing that regional grant application. So as part of this regional work, we're going to be elevating that vulnerable users working group, broadening the participation, making sure that we have other interested parties that are not traditional to the transportation planning process directly engaged, folks from community health, economic development, those representing the elderly, as well as emergency response, trauma, and aftercare. So really the full range of safety from incident to aftercare, or accident to aftercare rather. So we'll be forming that, and that group will be leading or overseeing and steering our regional work over the next year. As part of the Vision Zero work, we're also going to be doing a really robust public engagement campaign, telling the story of safety. You're going to hear a little bit more about later on in the agenda what FDOT is doing. We're going to be leaning into that and ramping up more over the next year to tell the safety story, to see where we can make behavioral change. It's not just concrete, steel, and asphalt. There's a lot of things that we can do immediately to have immediate change in the safety statistics. So we're going to be doing a deep dive data analysis, looking at the issues, looking at the evidence, and then, coming up with solutions accordingly. This is also a policy document or a policy review. So we'll be looking at Metro Plan Orlando's policies, how we've done business, and how we can improve doing our business to, continue improving safety conditions. We'll be doing that similar work as part of the county and municipal plans. So we'll be looking at county comprehensive and other plans as well to see how safety can be better incorporated into those planning documents. As part of that, we'll be preparing a resolution as well, which really kind of puts a bow on the entire process. But also part of that data collection and analysis, and a really critical step to the Vision Zero work is identifying a high injury network. And this kind of goes back to the data itself. Where are the issues? Where are those, fatalities, high injury, and those types of crashes? And we're going to respond accordingly with identifying projects and conceptualizing those projects, but also strategies. Like I said before, it's not just about, infrastructure projects. There's behavioral and communication campaign opportunities as well that we'll be pursuing. Another key element of Vision Zero action planning is progress tracking. We're not going to solve this overnight. It's going to take some time to address this issue, but we do have a Vision Zero. So we'll be developing a monitoring and tracking process as part of this. So that'd be how we report back to you, as well as back to our other decision makers on how we're doing based on the changes we made, the projects that we're implementing, and what that means actually to whether we're moving the needle or not. So at the end of the day, we package all of this up in what's called a comprehensive safety action plan. And what that's really going to allow us to do, hopefully in a year from now, is pursue additional federal discretionary funds. Again, we pursued this as a region for planning money to make us eligible. But my hope is, 10, 12 months from now, we'll be wrapping up this work and pursuing another regional grant application for implementation, pursuing over, up to $20 million for safety improvements, in our region. So that's the end in mind. That's the goal of this process. But you're going to be hearing a lot more about it over the next year, and if not, kind of, our course of work over the next 10 to 15 years, really. So you're going to be hearing a lot more about this as part of our process. But I just wanted to give you a little bit more of the mechanics today before we start diving into each one of these topics individually over the next few months. So with that, I'll answer any questions that you may have. But I venture to think you probably want to dive.
Well, thank you. Good preview. Great preference. I bet we have a question or two.
Quick question. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The makeup of the committee, you suggested that you were going to just continue on with an existing vulnerable users working group. Are there any other openings or Is there adequate representation from this?
From the CAC, yes, so we're gonna be elevating that group and diversifying it as well and kind of retitling it, to actually kind of, be a Vision Zero task force. But the participation we have from the CAC, I think is really strong. Ms. Council, Mr. Sevilla and RJ, Mr. Mueller, they're providing really great feedback. And they've been actively participating over the past 2 years. So we certainly want to keep them engaged, but also know as you're participating in our process, especially for the regional plan, with your participation on the CAC, each one, as we're going through this process, while there will be an overarching steering body, at each milestone, we're going to be coming back to you as an advisory body with updates and information. So you'll still be very much a part of the overall process.
Mr. Pickford.
Thank you, Chair. This may be more of a question for Eric or the specific municipality, but I'm wondering if it interrelates here. So recently in Southwest Orange County, and this might have been a county decision, but I don't know if it comes out of some of the funding from these initiatives. They just reduced a number of roads by 5 miles per hour for the speed limits. And it was 3 or 4 at least different roads within a 2-week period, just boom. So I was curious if that's, from the efforts we've done before, if that's informing those, or if it's the traffic signal studies where we're doing traffic counts, or kind of, I'm glad to see that happen because some of those roads don't necessarily need to operate at that speed. And I hope that helps reduce speed and reduce risk. I was just kind of curious, are those some of the things we may see out of these from a local, or is that being driven by the specific municipalities? Like, how is that all interrelated with the work Eric's doing and everything?
Yeah, so that's definitely interrelated to the overall Vision Zero, the speed reduction, speed management, there's a paradigm shift happening as it relates to that. You've probably heard us present on our speed management work in the past year. But that's certainly going to be an element of it when we're looking at the high injury network and we're developing crash profiles. You're looking at, why are these crashes occurring and speed and other factors, play a predominant role in that. So that's where on the high injury network, we may be identifying speed reduction. But in some cases, you have to change the road, the design to warrant a speed reduction, where in other cases, especially at the county level, they're able to do that a little bit differently. The mechanics that I just went through here are for the regional action plan. As part of our grant application, each of our counties and municipalities are also going to be going through this same process, really in parallel at the same time. So so each of these steps that I just talked about, we'll be diving deeper and more into the local issues, local networks, local policies. So I see speed reduction and then the discussion of that, something that's probably going to come up, throughout the Vision Zero action planning process. And Eric was saying it did not come out of Signal. He doesn't want to take credit for that. But again, I think it's just kind of part of the paradigm shift that's occurring as it relates to safety and speeds interconnection to that.
So now Eric has to do a news study based on the news speed limits.
I think that takes care of us over here, right? We all good? Okay. Ms. Salas.
I think so. Thinking about the Vision Zero action plans and number 3, where you're looking at data analysis and things of that. Have you guys in your department considered also kind of stepping into the AI side of using some of these tools to kind of generate more brainstorming, more out of the box concepts for analysis of the data? That I mean, everybody. Well, yeah, I know. It's very well, whatever it is you guys are using, because there are new tools. And I know that sometimes there are some actual tools that people through the transportation planning groups are saying, here's an AI aspect to it that maybe you can look at. Not so much predictive, because you're already using predictive, right? Analytics and in a sense, right? Okay.
My mic on, not really. We're going to be in the data collection analysis. We will be using what I would classify as state of the practice methods in identifying the high injury network. We will be using, GIS technology. It's certainly not artificial intelligence, to
GIS
degree.
is pretty standard, but I'm talking about the new tools that have been coming up lately. And I think that there's a lot to be thought about, not just to tell me or react to, but to consider and maybe even like look into some of the state practices or some of the, new thoughts out there about that so that you can kind of branch out into some of the new thinking, because it does create some more out of the box stuff. Some people probably have their opinions on it or whatnot, but it's a lot what's going on in the university setting. I know that we're encouraged to use it as well in my department to kind of just try to start thinking about it, especially in the writing aspects or even in the, in the analysis part. Just to consider.
Mr. Spiegel, you recognize.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick comment, and thank you for mentioning the lowering of the speeds, because it's been really a privilege to be on this vulnerable users group committee and to see such quick action. I feel like we're poised for great things to happen very quickly because of the representation that's part of this group and the information that is shared. And then but regarding the target speeds and lowering the speeds on those roads, because they were very dangerous. We also then were able to work very closely with our County Commissioner, Nicole Wilson, to clear the way for those speeds to be reduced in a quick manner. So thank you guys for that opportunity. I'm really excited about the future of this.
Very good. Ms. Mormon, recognize.
This question may have been answered last month, but I'm sorry I wasn't here, but the Sand Lake Road interchange, and you may not be the right person to answer it, Alex, but where is there detailed information on how that project is going to evolve? And because it's almost a 4-year process.
Are
on
you
a
referring to
very
the Sand Lake at
heavily-
I-4 interchange? So if you go to I-4 beyond the ultimate, there's a lot of information about that particular one. It's going to be a diverging diamond, so it's a significant design change.
Right.
Is Lorraine?
I'm thinking
here?
about what is
Maybe
the,
Lorraine, I know this is kind of a different, if you don't mind,
yeah.
she could probably speak to it best, just given her experience on the I-4 corridor.
So I'm thinking specifically to the fact that there's so many tourists that are using that, especially during the summertime.
Yes.
So what is the plan for kind of moving that traffic in a way that it's not worse than it was before?
Good morning, Lorraine Bobo, FDOT District 5. So I don't know specifics to share with you today, but I can tell you that that team is working directly with all of the businesses in that area, not only to share information to them, but also like on our websites and things like that. If you go to cflroads.com, all of our projects are on there. Go down to I-4 and you can find it pretty easily. I know we've got some meetings planned, like public meetings to share, which may not necessarily be for the tourists, right? Because they're coming and going all the time. But just all the folks that are going to be traveling through that on a daily basis, the folks that live in that area and around that area and things like that. So I can tell you that over the years, we have really increased the amount of information that we share and how we share that. So hopefully we do a good job, but we're always welcome to new ideas and things like that to share. So if you want to chat further, let me know. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Council, you're recognized.
I have to truly say thank you for allowing me to be on the group of the safety people. I've seen a lot of things happen.
Ms. Council, thank you. Thank you.
I just noticed. I've seen a lot of great things happen on being in this group for 2 years. I've seen a sidewalk go up on Marigold Avenue. I've seen speed reductions throughout my county of Osceola. I've also seen beacon lights go up, and it's amazing to see that we're taking this, time to really care about our people that are walking, our pedestrians, our people that are on buses. So I thank you for being on this group.
Okay, that do it? As I said earlier, if you think of another question, and I know we're early in this presentation, we're going to hear about this for a while. Just submit your questions and we will get answers to you. Okay, thank you so much for that, Mr. Dragon. Next, we have a presentation from Ms. Lorraine Bobo. You could have just stayed up here, right? From FDOT, who will tell us about the state's focus on distracted driving awareness. Ms. Bobo, the floor is yours.
All right, I'm alive. All right, very good. So again, my name is Lorraine Bobo with the Florida Department of Transportation in District 5. I'm our safety administrator in District 5 for our Office of Safety. I'm going to give you the presentation that I did share with the board just a few weeks ago, but I'm going to add just a little bit in the beginning because I'm not sure that I've spoken to you guys very recently.
I think
I've seen you at the board meetings. So our office was created 2 years ago in June of 2021. And it was really created to just bring a more focused effort into safety on our roadways. When I started doing these presentations, I called it our focus on safety. And then very quickly I realized, like, well, wait a minute, we've always been focused on safety. This is really our refocus on safety, just like the conversation that I just heard here, right? There's a lot more willingness to be bold, do things that we wouldn't have done even 5 years ago and things like that. So I've been very encouraged over the last 2 years on the things that we are implementing into our projects. Just ideas that we're even considering that we wouldn't necessarily have considered before. So why this refocus on safety? Today, we will lose 8 people on our roadways in Florida due to traffic crashes. It's 8 people that woke up, they had their breakfast, they planned on going to dinner with their family tonight, going to their son's baseball practice, whatever it may be, and they're not going home. And they don't deserve that, right? That's a lot of people that we are losing every single day in Florida. In Central Florida, it's about 2 a day. We get all the fatal crash reports, and it's disheartening how many people we lose every day. And they're all preventable. Most of them are a contributing factor is behavior. 40% of the people that died in Central Florida last year, 40% were not wearing their seatbelt. They had an opportunity to, and they didn't click. 90% chance of survival goes up 90% if you just wear your seatbelt. So that's, 90% of 172 people could have still been here today. So while we're focusing a lot on our infrastructure, what are those things that we can implement, those countermeasures we can implement into our roadways so that you don't feel comfortable going any faster than what the speed limit is? We talked about changing out the signs. That's great. But if you feel more comfortable driving faster than 25 or 30 or whatever it is, you just kind of naturally do, unless you're really paying attention to your speedometer. So we also want to make sure that we're implementing countermeasures that don't make you feel comfortable driving any faster. Landscaping, chicanes, there's speed tables. There's a lot of different things that we can implement into the right scenarios to reduce those crashes and ultimately those fatalities and serious injuries to zero. So these are our numbers for Central Florida. Last year, we lost 776 people on our roads. That's more people than District 5 even employs. That's a lot of people that could still be with us today. 25% of them are our most vulnerable users, people that are walking and biking. What can we do to save those lives? I'll share real quick something I do with my boys when we're in the car. I don't know if you ever played Punch Bug when you were a kid. We don't punch at our game, but if we see somebody walking or biking, you say something and you get a point. My 12-year-old is very competitive and he wanted to figure out how he could get more points than his brother. So if you see somebody walking or biking that maybe isn't doing the safest thing, maybe they're walking 250 feet from the crosswalk, and there's a crosswalk right there where you're more likely to be seen, or you're wearing dark clothes, or something that's unsafe, you get 2 points. And so you might be like, okay, well, that's a fun game, but they're looking for them. They're watching out for them. So one day when they're driving, in a few years, they'll be looking for those people and hopefully never be involved in a crash that they're involved in. While most of our crashes occur on local roads, there's more fatalities on our state roads, and that's likely due to the speed. State roads tend to be faster speed limits. They're going from city to city, and that's what they're intended for. So what I say that because this is not an FDOT problem. This is something that we can all affect, even just in our own personal day-to-day driving. Regardless of what your job is or what committees you're on, you can make a difference. And our biggest issues are speeding, distracted driving, and occupant protection. So now I'm going to go into more of what we're doing with distracted driving. First, real quick though, the safe system approach. This is a really, I think Alex actually mentioned it earlier. There's a lot of different things that can be done to get us to zero. It's not just improving our roadways. It's not just improving our behaviors. It's that aftercare. It's safer vehicles. It's all of those things that will help us get there. You could spend days on just this topic. Mentioned Vision Zero and FDOT's Target Zero. Sometimes people are like, what's the difference? There's really no difference. They have the same goal, 0 fatalities and serious injuries on our roadways. Internationally, nationally, and locally, communities tend to adopt Vision Zero. FDOT just titled ours Target Zero, but our goal is all the same, and we look forward to working with everybody to get to zero. These are the Vision Zero partners within our district so far. All of Brevard County, all of their cities and towns have adopted, and that's at the credit of Space Coast TPO. They really work towards that. Locally, we've got City of Orlando, Osceola County, Orange County, City of Altamont Springs. I think that's everybody that has a resolution on the books. So I definitely commend all of them, and anyone other communities want to join that, beyond Metro Plan, please let me know. So I mentioned earlier that in most crashes, a contributing factor is behavior. So, we're really encouraging folks that when you drive, just drive. Yes, the person next to you might be stressing you out, but just let them go do their thing, right? You worry about what you can do. Don't drive under the influence. Don't drive drowsy. Try to keep your speed to the speed limit, and definitely don't drive distracted. So on to distracted driving. Distracted driving is really defined as anything other than just driving, right? So if you're changing the radio, you're clicking a new podcast, you're just checking to see who texted you, make a phone call, you're distracted, talking to your kids in the back seat, telling them not to fight or whatever it may be. You have to really actively, personally, I have to really actively think and go, wait a minute, I'm not focusing on what I'm doing. I'm driving this vehicle that could cause harm in just a split second. When you're texting, you're using manual, visual, and cognitive ability. You're taking your eyes off the road, you're taking your mind off the road. So please, no text is worth somebody's life. The wireless communications while driving law did go into effect in 2019. There are some efforts underway to expand this law. The department's not really involved in that, but we are kind of just following those efforts. There are to 13 or 26. Anyways, there are other states that have adopted a fully hands-free. So you're not calling, you're not texting, you're not searching for anything on your phone, you're not doing anything. Whereas this current law is really just related to texting. So in 2022, drivers under 30 made up almost 40% of our distracted driving crashes. So that's that younger age. Under 40 was 30%. We had nearly 54,000 crashes that occurred by distracted drivers. That's over 1,000 a week in the state. I drive every day from Altamont to DeLand, and I see a lot of distracted driving. And so these are just the ones that were actually involved in crashes and reported it, right? So that's a big part too, is while our, we can look through our reports and they're identified if they were involved in distracted driving, it's very unreported, right? You have to admit that you were doing it. Or somebody in the car says, no, I saw them texting, or, whatever it may be. The officer can't just write it down because he thinks it may have occurred. So in 2022, we lost 271 people to distracted driving in Florida, another 90 in District 5, and then 50 in the Metro Plan Orlando area. So over half of our crashes in our 9 counties occurred in these 3 counties. And like I said before, it goes very underreported, I should say. So now diving into Metro Plan Orlando, 23% of the crashes were attributed to distracted driving. 499 people were seriously injured. So they may not have lost their life, but their life has been affected, forever. And that probably translates onto their families as well. And then 15% of the fatalities in Metro Plan Orlando were attributed to distracted driving. So who's involved in these crashes? That age group from 25 to 34. This is not broken down into male or female, but from other studies, it is, I'm not going to say mostly males, but but I can tell you, I see lots of different people doing it, at least when when I'm out and about and stuff like that. So we are this month doing, we'll get to that in a minute. So where do they live? They mostly live in Florida. And from the crashes that are occurring in Metro Plan Orlando's area, the majority they live in this area. They're our friends, they're our neighbors. The next group is they live in Florida. They might be coming from Volusia County. They might be coming from Miami, right? The smallest group is from out of state. Sometimes there's some misnomers that it's all the tourists that are coming. And having just been a tourist in Omaha a few weeks ago, I can tell you we were driving a lot slower because we didn't know where we were going. And we were like, are we turning there? Are we turning there? We were distracted, right? Because we're trying to figure it out. But it's our friends and our neighbors that are being involved in these crashes. So what is the distraction? And again, I said before that the officer can only really identify it as a distraction if he or she can confirm it, right? So it does go under reported. So like when I was looking at this information, texting is like a little tiny sliver. And I'm just like, that just can't be, right? So take this slide with a grain of salt. Know that it's happening out there and that we can collectively do better. I know I've been guilty. I'm really trying hard, but. So where is this occurring? It's occurring everywhere, mostly on state systems, because I would include state and interstate as state, and then turnpike and toll as state as well. But it's happening everywhere. It's say thirds. So it just so happens that this month, Central Office had looked across the state to see what was going on, and they identified Central Florida's distracted driving was our biggest issue. So they have put over $1 million into media, which I'll go into in a minute, to really focus in on distracted driving in the Central Florida area. Based on the data, we have been trying to reach out to those males that are 22 to 27, but also the folks that influence them, right? They've told us in focus groups that if their mom's in the car or their girlfriend or their wife, they drive differently, right? But if they die in a crash, it doesn't matter who was, in that car, right? They're affecting themselves. So we're really trying to focus on reaching them. We're working with our law enforcement partners so that if they do stop somebody, they can, give tip cards, and it's an educational experience and not just a ticket. So these young male drivers, they have told us they know the laws, but they behave otherwise. They feel that need to be connected. And I'm not a male 22 to 27, but I feel that too, so I get it. They're very confident in their driving. They want to be in control and admired. They do not want to be told what to do. I don't know, that goes for my boys too, so it doesn't matter the age. But they are still influenced by their parents and their grandparents. So on May 31st, we did have a kind of a media kickoff event. We invited all the media in to help share this message about distracted driving. The response was amazing. We had 5 TV stations and 1 print media, and we had some folks from Metro Plan join us. And in the first 24 hours, we had 52 stories, which is pretty awesome because we didn't pay for that. That wasn't part of that $1 million of paid media. And I know I've seen stories since that time. So that message is continuing to be shared. And we're actually having an event this Friday morning to share this message, but also others because we're coming into the Independence Day weekend. So we're going to continue to share that message. So that paid media that I talked about, that almost $1 million. Have you guys seen the videos on YouTube, TV, billboards? You may have seen the one with the officer that has to go tell the mom that the son didn't make it. And I know that one's very moving. I was in the elevator yesterday and someone told me that their son was on YouTube, and they get in the car and he said, "Dad, you need to turn on your do not disturb." And he was just like, "Yes, I do," So the message is getting out there. So it's been very exciting to see that out and about. So these are events that we had in the month of June. I think the Volusia Speedway is going to happen in July because it kept getting rained out. But we tried to really go across the district to go to places that we could reach that demographic. I was at the one on June 19th at the Orlando Sportsplex in Maitland, and they were actually running a contest. So this week they're kind of collecting data, and they're asking them like, are you using do not disturb? Are you setting your playlist ahead of time? Are you doing these things? And every time they answer, that they did that, they're getting put into a drawing. So it's nice that our, business partners are helping us out in that way as well. Just that reinforcement. So what can you do as an individual? Don't drive distracted, right? Use your do not disturb. And I've done a little bit of research on this because we're having a contest in our office right now this month for turning on do not disturb. Every single smartphone has an option if you go under settings. So you don't even have to download an app or anything like that. I know some people when you plug it into your autoplay in your car or whatever, it does it for you too. You can change your settings. So it's not a hard thing to do, but you do have to actively kind of think about it. Share a social media post about distracted driving. I'm sure Metro Plan's been sharing some. I know our office has been sharing them. Tell your friends and your neighbors. It's maybe kind of an awkward conversation, but hey, I want you to come home. I want to see you at the next, party or event or whatever it is. So do your part. So please just think about using do not disturb on your phones. So I like to end my presentations with a safety second because it takes just a second to be safe. I'm going to keep on that message of do not disturb. There's a lot of different apps that you can download, but like I said, you don't have to do that as either. So please think about turning on your do not disturb every time that you get behind the wheel. Thank you. Be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Bobo. Just a quick question for you. Is there any statistics on how many fatalities there are that's caused by a distracted driver, for example, from a separate vehicle, a different vehicle?
Right. So is it the person
fatality at the hands
Yes.
of another distracted?
We could probably try to dig into that, but I understand what you're asking is was it the person that died?
Different car.
Were they
for
just the distracted driver, or was it the other one? Yeah, I don't have that breakdown here today.
And also, is it true, or is it still true that the probability of an accident, period, is going to be close in proximity to your home? You mentioned the majority of fatalities on the interstates, the highways, but is it still true that the majority of accidents happen drive time on the way to work, to the grocery store?
Yeah. I haven't necessarily heard a statistic on that, but I can just tell you my feeling from reviewing reports and the pie chart that's telling us that most people are living in this area is that yes, I mean, I can tell you that sometimes I don't know how I got home, right? I got in my car and then I ended up in my driveway, and I'm sure I made a whole bunch of decisions almost, subconsciously along the way. So I could see where, you start thinking about the meeting earlier or whatever it might be, and now you're
All
like,
of a sudden you're home.
oh, right. Or somebody suddenly slams their brakes in front of you, so you need to do that. And if you're not really paying attention, you could be involved in something. So I'll have to look into that.
In all fairness, I was going to start over here, but I'm going to give you a chance to come up with your questions. We'll start on this side. Okay, I saw you pointing. Miss White, how are you? Good. Okay, I think let's start right here because I think Mr. Pegram went up first, so we'll start.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Bobo, I think I've been on this committee 5+ years now, and that's one of the most powerful presentations that I've seen here in not only the unfortunate data that you had to present, but how digestible you made it, how the various messages and things that you found. So thank you so much for this. I think it's really, really important. And that's coming from someone who lives in that male 25 to 34 range. So I feel like I had to speak up a little bit. And this may be a surprise for Mr. O'Hanlon, but I'm actually going to kind of lean his way on this and say, whether it's, I won't say the end all fully autonomous vehicles help solve a lot of these issues, but there are, they're looking at, I don't know if they've been implemented necessarily, but federal changes looking at automotive manufacturers requiring systems like automatic emergency braking in future vehicles. And so when we look at those technologies and kind of the results we're seeing from how that is preventing rear end collisions and avoidances, I hate to make this topic economic, but is there any return on investment for the state to say for every fatality we present, because if this vehicle would have had this technology, it would have prevented that, it has this economic impact from the state. As your data shows, the majority is local people, state people. So I'm just interested as that becomes a federal mandate for these manufacturers, is there anything that the state can help use this data to incentivize people to, I don't want to say cash for clunkers, but to adopt vehicles that have this technology? Because not only is it going to save or prevent fatalities, but something to bring awareness and incentivize people to, hey, this would be very valuable, not only for your life and the life of others, but to get a new vehicle that has this technology. I'm just interested to see.
Yeah, that's an interesting aspect to it. I haven't thought about that aspect of it, so I can certainly take that back. I know in, I think it's the European Union, maybe 2 years ago now, they adopted where all vehicles almost have like a governor on them, like they can't go over a certain speed, which is a little bit different than what you were saying, but it's that same idea of, the government coming down and saying, hey, we care about you. So, you don't need to go 120 miles per hour, type thing. So
I was going to say, I think it's incentivized by the state when they approve certain rates for car insurance, for example, all the way back to when, if you had airbags, there was a discount, or if you had automatic seat belts.
Yeah.
And
a good
yeah,
point.
they are looking at how safe autonomous vehicles are as well. But
I would
yes,
say that's indirect, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to communicate that to
Right.
the consumer versus saying, here's a tax credit, or here's a very visceral, direct correlation. That would be my only.
all right, good question though. Steve.
Thank you for that presentation. It was very informative. My question is regarding the males 22 to, I believe you said 34,
Yeah.
35.
yeah, 22 to 27.
To 27. Okay. What are the what are the efforts to catch them early? Meaning, I think back in early 2000s, which I may be dating myself, it was the big push for wearing your seatbelt. So during driver's ed class, you had all these videos showing you the importance and what could happen to individuals if they don't wear their seatbelts.
Yeah.
So are there efforts to partner with schools, driving schools, to catch them early on, because that tends to be when people are more open to learning, because they're just now learning how to utilize a vehicle?
Mhm.
And if so, what are those efforts? And also, just as a parent, you gave a great example of a little small thing we can do in our cars to help our children, but is there another way that you've seen where you can help younger kids understand, not only as a driver in the future, but as a pedestrian, how to kind of understand and be aware of their surroundings? Because I see now where more and more younger kids have these phones in their hand and they're literally walking like this. How do we help them as they grow to understand the importance of being aware of their surroundings?
No, thank you. Those are great points. And I didn't get into here, but most of our efforts out of the Office of Safety is that outreach, is that education and getting out to schools, to any group that will have us to talk about things. Personally, I don't think you can start young enough. My boys, if I touch my phone in the car, they will call me out on it. And it's usually, and I say usually, it is when I'm like sitting at a stoplight and I'm like just waiting for, I'm like, oh, whatever. Mom, you're on your phone. I'm like, I know, but and I start to explain myself, and then I'm like, no, you're right. And I put it down. At our Take Your Child to Work Day in April, we talked about how to cross the crosswalk safely, to use the crosswalk. You stop, you look both ways. We talked about distracted driving, and I told all those children that they're allowed to call their parents out on, if they're on their phone, because, hey, I want to go home tonight, type thing, and to be, not be afraid to say those things. We partnered recently with the Ford Driving Foundation. They were here in April. They had a 2-day course. It was phenomenal. Like they purely deal with defensive driving, right? So like, what do you do when you are, faced with, something that happens, right? Not just the regular like driving. And one of the things that they did is they put the teenagers in a car and had them holding their phone. Now there was a professional driver in the car that could stop and the car couldn't go, but they weren't going to get hurt. But then they actually had to feel what it felt like. Oh, wait a minute. I didn't see that ball that just, got thrown in front of me and things like that. So we're trying to partner with as many of those groups as we can. I've heard about some sheriff's offices have groups where they bring in teenagers and really talk to them about things. And I have no doubt that distracted driving is on that list. We're trying to, amp that up as much as we possibly can to partner. But I think that's where it comes. This is not all on FDOT's shoulders. This is on a lot of different groups and advocacy groups that can help continue to share that message. How do I do it personally? I'm a den leader in Cub Scouts. Every PAC meeting, we have a safety moment. And it's wear your bicycle helmet, buckle up. Do your parents buckle up? That type of thing. And so that's something personally that I can take 5 minutes a month and reach all those children and their parents that are sitting in the room. So I personally feel like there are ways that we individually can influence, and marketing and things like that show that people need to hear things more than one time. Talking about the phones up, my boys, they get out, we'll go to dinner for a restaurant. They get out of the car and they're walking through the parking lot with their tablet. So we have a rule, it goes to the side. I said, if you get hit in this parking lot, it's just as much your fault as theirs, because you weren't paying attention. So just keep going with that. And so.
Who's
Thank
bringing
you.
us the billboard campaigns with the distracted driving and even the click it or ticket?
So those are all coming out of DOT.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ms. Pizzo.
Very good
Thank
presentation.
you.
I'm going to overshare a little bit here. We recently lost a family member in May. Cinco de Mayo, 10:15, 10:30 at night. He was on his bicycle and a pickup truck hit him. Whether he drove into it or he hit him, whatever. Distracted driving. The driver was in that age range, had his 2-year-old child with him that late at night, probably on his way home from a party. Who knows? We will never know what happened. So as a driver, as a cyclist, I am very much aware that cyclists can swerve for whatever reason. And we are just as responsible for avoiding them as the cyclist is avoiding us. So this was a very powerful presentation for me. It really hit home. I'm sure I'm not the only one here today that may have that statistic in the family. So I just can't say enough. Put the phones down, be aware, pay attention.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for sharing that, Ms. Bell. Mr. O'Hanlon, recognized.
Thank you. I'm just going to address a couple of items that Jim is talking about. Most people are unaware a Tesla comes with 1 or 2 versions of autopilot, and very few Teslas have full self-driving. Full self-driving at the moment, if the car is driving, it's 650% better than the average driver. There are, trying to think, I think it's crossing a threshold of 1 billion miles with no accidents. Give you an idea where your thoughts are. It used to be the car would be very nervous if somebody was on the sidewalk. And if that person took even the slightest inclination towards the street, the car goes into full regen, which is not slamming the brakes on, but just about until that person would stop. Or me seeing the guy's not going to jump in front of the car, I'll hit the pedal to keep the car going. We're now to the point that the car looks at that person and watches his head. If he turns like he's going to turn to the street, it nails regen. But if he's walking straight, it won't nail regen, it'll just drive by them. That's the level of detail that full self-driving gets you. It not only sees that there's a person on the sidewalk or a cyclist, okay? It monitors speed and direction, and it looks at their actual head to see which way they're turning to prevent these types of problems. And it's like if that pickup truck had FSD, that guy, before he makes a turn, you usually turn your head. It would have nailed full regen, the accident would not have taken place. And actually, there have been no accidents. The car is unbelievable. It's too safe. I routinely override it because no, that car is not going to jump in front of us. We can proceed.
It's like riding a horse.
Yeah.
Good information. Thank you,
Yeah,
Mr. O'Hanlon.
so that's what level that's at.
I think the time curve is about to catch back up to us. We were ahead of it. Now it's about to catch up to us.
I tried.
Dr. Shaw, you directly.
Thank you. Very good presentation. And this is anecdotal. On my way here this morning, I was presented with a birdie for driving the speed limit. So maybe 5 minutes up the road, the individual had an encounter with the sheriff. Now, I wanted to slow down a little bit and laugh. But then your points that you made here, you know, when kids between 18 and 19 and
22 and 27.
20, yes, they have no respect, most of them, for other drivers. They just think the road belongs to them. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shaw.
Those
Ms.
male
White, that's
drivers.
your part of it.
Yes, thank you, Lorraine. I had a list of questions and comments. I guess I should have gone first, but I'll make them quick. Last week I was in Washington, DC, and I just happened to stumble upon the Washington, DC Area Bicyclist Association Summit on Vision Zero. One of the things that came up, and I always ask this question at every meeting, and I keep asking because I'm still not clear. When I looked at the statistics regarding walkers and bikers, I'm always curious about the scooter drivers, the electric bikes, and in Washington, DC, it's a tourist area just like here. And there are a lot of line bikes and those, I think they're still called line bikes, those rentals. How many of the pedestrians, or how are they being classified? Are they pedestrians, walkers, or drivers?
I think they're a separate category in Signal 4, but I can follow up with you on that.
Okay, so that was one question. Another, I saw that Altamont Springs was a part of the municipalities. What is the criteria to join? Because I'm a resident in Seminole County, and we only have 6 other cities that I would like to invite to join.
Yeah, just real quick, and I'm not sure if you were in on the earlier presentation, but as part of our regional and local Vision Zero action planning, it's our intent that every single, our 3 counties and 23 municipalities in our region will make that slide. So we're probably gonna have to make the logos really small next year, because it's really our intent to have every single one of our partners and us as an MPO Vision Zero certified and kind of on that track. So.
And what's the criteria for that? It's just an application?
The vision, I kind of go back to my presentation, identifying a high injury network, and having a steering body to oversee that, a task force. Identifying projects are key elements of that, and then the resolution. So it's really a commission, a council going on the record that they are Vision Zero by a certain year, kind of a target year, 2045, 2050, whatever that is. And then also identifying a monitoring plan, knowing that that horizon year is farther out to revisit that. So our goal, like I said earlier, come next year, if Lorraine gives this presentation next year, every single one of our municipalities will have a Vision Zero policy and comprehensive action plan.
Thank you. Your goal is my goal.
Absolutely.
And lastly, we keep talking about the cell phones and the tablet. The newer cars, they have the larger screens. Some of the cars create the distraction. So it's kind of an oxymoron. Now you have the high-end speakers. When we talk about distraction, I'm curious about, if I saw the colors correctly, the largest pie was unknown distraction. I'm just curious, what are some of those unknowns that we don't know of?
So I think that comes back to what the officer can, tag that report, that crash report as. A distraction is anything that is taking your eyes and your mind off the road, right? My youngest yesterday was like, Mom, look at this, thing on my tablet. And he's like, I'll wait till you stop at a stoplight to show you. But now I'm distracted, right? And it doesn't mean you don't have conversations, but it got me kind of off what I was doing, right? So, I mean, I think there's a laundry list of things that can distract a driver.
So my last share, right under focus on the road for the campaign, I'm gonna give you number 4, be present. You guys can have that free.
Okay, thank you. I will write that down.
All right, we got to move on. Let's try and keep it to questions she can answer really quick for us, because we still have 2 more presentations as well. Ms. Gus, you're recognized.
Thank you, Speaker. I did want to say thank you for the presentation. It was very informative. I do also appreciate the youth outreach that you guys are pushing ahead. But what I did find, I guess what was the most alarming part was that we understand it's male drivers. It's male drivers, you said up to 34. I don't remember exactly, what was that? 27 or 28 to
So
34?
for the crashes that occurred in Metro Plan Orlando, 25 to 34 was the biggest age group. That's just how that dashboard breaks it down, but it's males 22 to 27 that we've really narrowed in on.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just feel like that's the beginning of the workforce. That's the beginning of the workforce, and that's the type of, because that's the major part of the pie, that's the major part of the issue. I think that we have to kind of still keep a direction specifically for those people. So maybe outreach, events or things like that that are in a place like a business or an office space where they're, constantly having to drive back and forth to, because those are the people that we're talking to, and they're entering, the workforce and becoming, getting onto the roads regularly, they're the ones here. So I did think that actually found it pretty interesting that it is the people that are next to us that are causing these crashes, and everybody wants to think it's a tourist that can't drive while it's raining. So thank you so much for that.
Okay. Mr. Lopez.
Thank you, Chairman Campbell. I'll be quick. Ms. Bobo, good morning. Thank you for your presentation. My name is Daniel Lopez. I was appointed to this council by the Osceola County Commission, so my question pertains to Osceola County. I grew up in Point Siena, Florida.
Okay.
If anybody knows anything about Point Siena, it's usually one way in, one way out. 12-mile stretch of road called Pleasant Hill Road. Just earlier this week, I was presented with information that on average, last year in 2022, there were 75 crashes on Pleasant Hill. Well, if anybody knows about Pleasant Hill and Point Siena, it's 12 hours out of the day, it's gridlocked. So it baffles me that there's still, on average, about an accident every 5 days on that road when it's gridlocked. We're talking about distracted drivers. Well, my assumption is most people are just in a rush and trying to get on the main road over there. I saw the heat map, and a majority of the fatalities and accidents on Osceola County, in Osceola County, was on the west end, particularly around the touristy areas, but also in that Point Siena area. Would you be able to provide me information of the specific statistics of Osceola County? And the reason I asked that, everybody on Facebook all the time, another accident in Point Siena on Pleasant Hill, what happened this time? I'd like to be able to provide that information next time somebody asks that question.
Absolutely. Let's connect after the meeting and I can
Okay, sounds good.
share that. Yeah.
Mr. Peters.
Thank you, sir. Rand, good
Hi,
presentation.
thank you.
You know, many distracted drivers are not the direct cause of the accident, but the indirect cause of the accident. Because distracted drivers, if they're on the phone, they drive slowly. They drive slower than normal. But what happens is that there's a lot of swerve movements to get around that. Are there statistics on that?
I'd have to dig into that to see if there are, but it's also, if you look down at your phone for just 2 seconds and you're driving 55 miles per hour, your vehicle just traveled a length of a football field. So think about when you are driving, when you are paying attention and something happens to you right in front of you and you have to immediately react. They're not reacting, right? That's when you hear those crashes where they just never hit their brakes. They didn't even see it coming, type thing. So we can dig into that.
District 5 seems like more, fatalities proportionally than the other districts. Is that true?
That is true. We have the most fatalities. It's tough to compare the districts, Miami's 1 or 2 counties is very different than our 9 counties. But we do have the highest concentration. That's what I'm trying to change.
I so hate to crunch this because this is such critical information. Ms. Mott, you recognize.
Thank you, Chair. Exceptional presentation. I remember when you all first presented, when you first started this program, and I'm just as excited about it today. And just also it's refreshing to know that FDOT is this committed to making sure we can remedy this. And along with my excitement of hearing about the commitment, I'm equally heartbroken when I hear the numbers too. It's just scary. It's just scary to hear, that these lives are being lost. And like you said, it's something that can be preventable. Specifically to the point of, I think the number was 90 for the Central Florida area deaths, and then it was roughly half of that, 40 or 50 or something for the Metro Plan area. Can you peel back the onion and tell me a little bit why it's that many in the metro, over half, close to half for just the Metro Plan area?
I think Orange, Seminole, and Osceola are probably 3 of our busiest counties.
Okay.
Yeah.
70?
Yeah, from a
roughly?
population, yeah.
It's the majority of the population.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really?
That's
scary. About 70? Well, again, I can't thank you all enough for, for what you do, and keep up the great work, you and your team. I really appreciate what you all are doing to keep us safe. And I'll continue to do my part to encourage others to, hey, pay attention and focus and just drive is what they need to do. Thank you. That concludes my question, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Council. Your microphone.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I would love a copy of the information that you're gonna give to Mr. Lopez regarding that information, because I as well will take it into my community. I would love to make this a contagious contest in the Ponciana area. I do have abilities of doing events with children, elementary schools, middle schools, and I'm gonna be having one coming up July 28th. And I would love to spread the message of, put your phones down.
Yeah.
And since that age range that you're looking for with the smaller kids, because it's more like when you direct and redirect the child, and you have to do that constantly so you can get them to do it. Those kids are doing that with the parents as well.
Yeah.
And I know this for a fact because every Sunday I could make over 30 families come out on a Sunday morning to go do gardening. So if I can get them to do that, then we can get their kids repeating this back to them. So I would love to be a part of that if I can
Yeah,
send
let's
you a
connect,
message.
yeah.
And thank you once again.
You know, we could probably do a whole program with just you.
She'll be back.
And we will still not make time. But thank you so
Appreciate the
very
time.
much for your coming and sharing with us today.
Very welcome. Thank
Great
you.
job.
Appreciate it.
Our next presentation is Mr. Mark Trebis, who will present information about the coalition process for status of State Road 426 Aloma Avenue project. You have our attention.
All right, thank you. Good morning. My name is Mark Trebitz. I'm with the Florida Department of Transportation, Planning and Environmental Management Office. I'm here today to give you an update and provide an overview on our State Road 426 coalition. So Aloma Avenue in Winter Park from in the west side of the project limits, Park Avenue to the east side, North Lakemont Avenue. So I wanted to start with going over what a coalition is because it's kind of a new type of project that we're engaging in. We've had a few in District 5, and this is probably the first one we've done in your area. Coalitions are formed to evaluate transportation solutions and develop concepts for potential improvements that can be incorporated into roadway maintenance projects. So what that means is it's basically a planning function similar to a planning study, but we do a lot more community engagement, and we use the community to help advise and kind of guide the issues and needs that are identified as well as the solutions. It's usually always tied with a resurfacing project, which has the advantage of we resurface our roads generally every 12 to 15 years. So we're able to touch those roadways more frequently and do spot safety improvements while leveraging the resurfacing dollars. Like I said, we do a lot of community engagement, a big advantage of it. So it's a community-centric project. The locals really are behind it, especially this project. We've had a lot of outreach and a lot of discussion on this project. Another key advantage of this type of project is because it's a resurfacing project, it is funded for design and construction when the project is identified. So we then do a coalition prior to that design phase to do that outreach and preliminary engineering leading into design. So that's a major advantage that it does have funding and has a timeline to get to implementation. Because it is a resurfacing project with these spot safety improvements, it does not have a right-of-way phase. Our resurfacing projects are resurfacing our roads, which are in the right-of-way. So that right-of-way phase isn't there. There isn't funding for right-of-way. So the improvements have to stay within the right-of-way, which, you know, sometimes we identify things outside the right-of-way. Those would be more long-term improvements, but it has a major advantage of a quicker timeline. So especially this project, I know the locals are really wanting it implemented quickly because we don't have that 2-year right-of-way phase. We're able to go straight from the coalition to about a 1.5-year design phase and right into construction. So that's another major advantage. All right, so we talked a lot about community engagement and this being very community-centric type of project. How we start that off is we develop a project visioning team, and that's made up of local stakeholders. We partner with local government agencies, city, county, TPO are on this visioning team. It's a group of people. We also have community partners and stakeholders such as businesses along the corridor, Chamber of Commerce, Rollins College is right there. We also have a large advocacy group along the corridor. Residents do live on this corridor, so it's called Fix 426, and they're one of the key stakeholders that have been involved and very vocal on this project. And that PVT basically helps guide identifying issues and needs, and as well as some of the solutions that are being proposed. So looking at our study corridor, like I said, Park Avenue is the limit in the west and North Lakemont Avenue in the east. As you can see, it has very unique geometry from most roads in Florida, but kind of not for our Central Florida area. There's lakes in the area, so there is a lot of curvature in the road. And kind of a narrow right-of-way. Our right-of-way is actually from back of sidewalk to back of sidewalk. So it does provide some geometric constraints, but we are able to creatively work within that right-of-way. It's 1.7 miles. We talked about the right-of-way being back of sidewalk to back of sidewalk. It is typically 4 lanes, so 2 in each direction with some turn lanes along the corridor here or there. There's also 5-foot sidewalks on either side of that roadway, and the sidewalk is very close to the road, right at that curb. All right, so all of our studies and PD&Es that we do, and even coalitions, we focus on a purpose and need to guide us. So the goal of this maintenance resurfacing project is to not only rehabilitate that pavement, resurface it, we're also working to incorporate improvements within the existing right-of-way that will increase safety and safe travel along the corridors for all users. So we're talking not only the vehicles, but the bikes, the peds, the transit, looking at all those users. So the coalition is evaluating a variety of factors, including safety, pedestrian and bike mobility, speed management, and the traffic operations of the corridor. All right, so we talked about the PVT that helps guide us. We actually start with, before we look at any solutions, we start with what are the issues and needs out in the corridor. And we start by asking the PVT, the local users, people that live there, what are they seeing out there? No one knows their corridors better than those that use it, live on it, commute through it. So we ask them about the issues and needs, but we also do our own engineering field reviews, as well as safety and corridor analysis. And the slide here is showing some of the data that we found looking at the crashes. And this is from 2017 to 2022, the most recent data at the time of the start of coalition. And it showed 629 crashes. And we look also at what the most frequent types of crashes are. And this leads very closely into what Lorraine was talking about. We have the majority of rear end crashes, side swipes, lane departures, and distracted driving. So utilizing safe systems and target zero, one of our main goals is that changing driver behavior, not just by posting a sign, but by having engineering elements frequent and often to make users uncomfortable to speed, to make them engaged on the road and what's going on around them. Another key issue identified not only by the PVT, but also shown in our analysis was speeding along the corridor. We actually had a speed monitoring signs installed on the corridor between the curves, so between the Brewers curve and the Western curve there. The curves are actually posted a little slower than at 25 miles an hour. So wanted to see what that actual speed was. And it was found that majority of cars were going 10 to 15 miles over the posted speed. All right, so taking our engineering evaluation and working with the PVT, we narrowed down the issues and needs of the corridor, the main ones being speeding, lane departures, lack of bike ped crossings and mobility, and difficulty turning into and out of side streets and driveways. Like I said, this utilizing the safe systems approach and target zero, changing that driver behavior through engineering elements, helps us focus on the goals of safety, reducing speeds, that multimodal connectivity and mobility, and reducing crashes. And that those engineering elements, changing driver behavior, it's through engagement. Like we said, things are happening around them. The geometry of the road is changing. It's not just straight. There's curves. They need to pay attention. Through enclosure, have landscaping closer to the road to feel that visual friction or uncomfortableness to go fast. It's not wide open where you feel you can speed. Deflection, which would be the geometry of the road, both horizontally and vertically. So chicaning of the road, that serpentine geometry, or speed tables or raised pedestrian crossings. So along with that recipe that we kind of used for these coalitions, we identified the issues and needs, and then we got to our solution finding. So those issues that we identified, we kind of made a toolkit and then made 4 buckets here of solutions that directly address those issues and needs. And like we talked about, traffic calming, speed reduction, curb safety, bike ped transit, and safer turning movements. And this is kind of the list here, but I'm going to go over them in more detail when I show them where they are on the corridor in a few slides. All right, so we developed 2 alternatives with the guidance of the engagement that we have with the PVT. This is what we call the icon map. So it's just a simpler way to see the project and where a lot of the items are and where the improvements are. There's 2 alternatives. They're not necessarily everyone choose alternative 1 or 2. They have different items on them that can be mixed and matched And in our next phase, or the current phase we're in, we're taking those two alternatives that were presented at the community event, which is kind of an open house style where we present and have the boards and answer questions to the public. We'll be narrowing those two alternatives down to a recommended alternative, which we'll be then going back to the public with. But in this first alternative, the features here were more vertical in nature with the goal of slowing speeds and changing driver behavior. So some of the features shown are raised intersections, pedestrian crossings. So those are raised crosswalks with a pedestrian hybrid beacon. We actually are showing 7 crossings here in the corridor. And the reason we were showing 7 is we wanted to get that local input on where do you feel these would best be used and most effective, really. So we'd probably be narrowing those 7 down to about 3 along the corridor to not have too much of an operational impact. We also would have speed tables, which is still that vertical raised element, which would slow speeds. We're going to have narrow medians to prevent lane departures, dynamic curve system lighting to emphasize the curves at night, a concrete barrier to replace that guardrail that we have in the curves to prevent cars leaving the travel lanes, as well as to protect the bike peds that are on the sidewalk. Tightening side street curb returns, so it has a shorter length for the pedestrians to cross, as well as turning vehicles need to slow down more to navigate that tighter radius. Pavement markings to show the posted speed, especially when you are coming to one of those vertical elements, to remind them it's not just the signs that are posted, but also in the pavement that you should be going 25 or 30 when you are approaching these vertical elements, so you can navigate them and not feel them as much. The kind of a slower transition. If you're going quicker, you will feel a bump on those vertical elements. We also have internally illuminated raised pavement markings in some of the curve areas just to emphasize those curves. And another item that was proposed is an addition of a turn lane into Phelps. It requires us to narrow the lanes down to 9 feet, but we've been getting more public comment not in favor of narrowing the lanes there because 9 is kind of tight. And again, it's all about the frequent redundant roadway elements to force drivers to be more engaged and reduce their speeds. We also identified some long-term improvements that they do require right away, so they'll be identified in the study documentation for a future project. Some of those would be a roundabout at Chase Avenue, and we've actually got positive feedback in our public meetings and at the community event for a roundabout in that area. So that was always good to hear, as well as an additional southbound turn lane at North Lakemont Avenue. Also requires right away, but it was identified as a solution that could help with some issues with operations at that signal. And these infographic renderings we have them in a brochure at the front table, so you can study them in more detail. All right, so moving on to alternative 2. These are some of the features are the same, and we have a few new ones in this one. They're more horizontal in nature. So chicaning of the road, which is that serpentine road geometry, enhanced bus stop markings, and we're working with links to consolidate or relocate bus stops to align with proposed pedestrian crossings, removal of the slip lane at Chase, some different locations for pedestrian crossings, still showing more than we're going to ultimately do to get that public input. We have narrow medians. They're used more frequently in this alternative, especially in the curves and at different locations than alternative 1. Rumble strips to prevent and kind of notify people if they are leaving their lanes. And similar items such as the raised intersections, the dynamic curve system lighting, tightening of those curb returns, pavement markings for the speed, and in-lane decals to emphasize the turn or curve ahead, and pedestrian barriers in the curve as well. All right, so I have the next 3 slides, some renderings showing the existing, so kind of a before and after. And this one here is at, I think we're looking east towards Hinkle Circle. And this shows the raised bike ped crossing. So it's that gentle transition up to the flat table. And if you're going the speed limit, you don't almost feel it at all. You actually have a recent project DOT is working on just south of I-4 and OBT to Holden Avenue. We have several of these raised pedestrian crossings with what's also shown here, the pedestrian hybrid beacon signal, which is actuated by the pedestrian and gives them a red light to cross safely. This rendering also shows enhanced pavement markings to enhance the visibility of the crosswalk and also to show the speed approaching that vertical change. There's also shown raised narrow medians to prevent that lane separation. And again, this is a potential location for the pedestrian crossing. Next slide, we have a similar rendering of before and after existing versus proposed. And this is looking west approaching Brewer's Curve. So that's that eastern curve. It's showing the raised narrow median for to prevent lane or to promote lane separation and not have vehicles enter the oncoming traffic. We also have replaced the metal and timber guardrail with a concrete barrier wall. So that barrier was previously on the backside of the concrete. That guardrail was on the backside of the concrete. The barrier we're proposing will be actually separating the vehicles from the pedestrians and bikes that are on that sidewalk. There's actually not just lane departures in the curves, but there's vehicles leaving the roadway altogether, especially in this curve area. So this will definitely prevent that. It's also showing the dynamic curve system to emphasize that there is a curve and it lights up at night to emphasize at night. The last rendering I have here is 426 at Shepherd Avenue, and it's showing an example of a raised intersection. So it's similar to the raised crosswalk, has that gentle transition when you are going the speed limit up to the table, which is the intersection, which is flat. It also shows the potential for stamped or colored intersections to emphasize that it is raised, as well as for aesthetics. There's also shown the high emphasis pavement markings and the in pavement speed warning markings, as well as a PHB is also shown there, which is that mast arm structure just at the crosswalk on 426. All right, so looking at our project schedule and timeline, like I talked about, we had our community event. It's that kind of public open house that we had, where we did a presentation and boards to the public and answered questions, got community feedback. That was on June 13th, so very recently. We're now currently in that, taking those two alternatives along with the public input and narrowing it down to a recommended alternative. Once we've worked on that, we'll circle back with our PVT and have another community event. That community event will likely be around the September timeframe. And then the design phase, so the immediate next phase of the resurfacing project, will be starting around that time frame towards the end of 2023. Like I said, there's no right-of-way phase, so that design leads right into construction, which will happen in 2026. I believe it'll begin in late 2025. Our fiscal years are July to June. So late 2025 start of construction. And the last slide here, I have the project manager, Jesse Bloom. He's here with me today. Here's his contact information. Feel free to reach out on any questions. We also, like all our projects, have a CFL Roads website. If you want to find out any more, we also have brochures at the table that show both of our alternatives as well as some of the renderings. If you want to take it with you, show some of the people in your local area, some of the type of projects we're doing where we are really focusing on changing driver behavior and safe systems and Target Zero. Thank you.
Okay, very good. We have 2 cards raised at this point, looks like, and we have no time for questions left. So, as I said earlier, please send the questions to us. Ms. Horn, she is ready to take the questions and we will get answers for you. But let's do these 2 that's been up from the beginning. Okay, Mr. Pigram.
Thank you, Chair. A couple questions. I love all the various physical treatments that you're looking at implementing in space to try to control behavior and how drivers interact with the road. That area of Orlando in the residential spaces in Park Avenue has brick pavers, which traditionally you're not going to be speeding 40 miles an hour on that type of uneven surface. So I'm curious, in all the recommendations, there doesn't seem to be an alternative to asphalt, like a stamped concrete with a brick type of look to it that's easier to maintain than physical pavers themselves. So just wondering, if that's been evaluated and it doesn't reduce speed compared to other physical treatments or maybe it's a long-term maintenance cost issue. I'll say that in Southwest Orange County, one of those pedestrian hydrant beacons went in for a 2-lane crossing and within 6 months was completely ripped out and changed to a traditional signal. They found was even with a 2-lane crossing, one in each direction, there were so many signs explaining how that unique sign worked that the drivers didn't respect it. So I know we have in other areas of Orange County, island medians that are refuge that reduce the impact to traffic flow by separating that phase. So just curious if that road in any way in certain areas can be single laned volume wise and not create a butterfly effect by reducing and creating refuge space. So just lots of questions. But those are my broad things of, it seems like those two options seem to be very correlated for this is the treatment if we were to do something, and just curious about alternatives and how they got there.
If you have a long response, maybe we can just have
Yep.
that question sent to you.
Or I can meet up with you after and yeah.
Oh, we'd prefer, if you don't mind, we
So we
prefer to
keep it
send it out to. the
Oh, sure,
group,
sure, no problem. Yeah,
so
of
that-
course.
Ms. Pizzo, you recommend.
Thank you. I love your project. Great presentation. Back in
Thank
the
you.
day, this would have been. I got a slew of questions.
Gotta hold it tight.
I'm trying to. Okay, first, in your presentation, you talk about I can never pronounce it, chicaning a road. You need to explain because a lot of the folks out there don't understand just what that is, and you don't need to explain it right now. You talk about roundabouts, and I love roundabouts. I'm glad your locals are positive towards it, but how are you going to fit a roundabout in a 2-lane road without taking somebody's property or just making a little donut in the middle of the road? You can answer that later.
Yes, ma'am.
In your group of folks, and I'm jumping all over my notes, I apologize. In your group of folks that you had incorporated as your PPT, the school board, I would have included the school board, I would have included Rollins College, and I would have found an advocacy for anyone that might represent those individuals that may be physically impaired. That's just my thoughts, because in this corridor, you have a lot of residential. I have seen people physically impaired in this corridor. This is kind of like my old stomping grounds. I kind of grew up in this area. So that's important to consider that. My question, you're lowering speed. What is the speed throughout this corridor? I know it varies from Lakemont to Park Avenue. And has consideration been given to just keeping it to 25 miles an hour? I don't see anything here for cyclists, and cyclists do take to the road on this corridor. You know, you mentioned bicyclists and pedestrians on the sidewalk. No, the spandex crowd is going to be in the road. They're not going to be on the sidewalk. That's just a fact of life, right? So has consideration been given to lowering the speed and making it a share, which also brought the question is, what is the lane width in this corridor? I know in some areas it's pretty tight, especially going around some of the curbs, but in other areas it tends to open up. So keep it a standard, maybe 10.5 to 11 feet. And that also has a way of psychologically slowing people down. They don't want to speed if they feel tight corridor. With the lanes, bike lanes, sharrows.
All right.
I think I covered it all. Great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, listen, Mark, we totally appreciate you. I'm sorry we got this time crunch on us.
No problem.
But I don't want to start losing people and we have another presentation. So thank you so much. But members, if you have another question, please send it to Ms. Horn and we will get them answered. Okay?
Thank you.
Finally. Understand. Mr. Eric Hill, Metro Plan Orlando, who will provide a status update on ongoing transportation system maintenance and operation master plan. Mr. Hill, thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members. Mr. Chairman, I know we are short on time, so if it pleases you, I can pretty much get to the meat of this presentation and forego some of the preview and review from the last update.
We have
I had a
13
here
minutes.
over here, so.
Okay.
Okay, so transportation systems management operations for some of the members that are not as seasoned. this is a look at how we can use innovations in technology to improve mobility and safety. Now, before I get going, let me regale you for just a moment. And Mr. O'Hanlon, you may want to use earmuffs here. But this is a book, Autonorama, that I read over a year ago, year and a half ago, something like that. But it's a real good book. It's a real good look at how technology and transportation has evolved since the 1939 World's Fair. And at that World's Fair, that was the first time there was an exhibition on autonomous vehicles. And at that time, it was 20 years away. And subsequently, at every World's Fair, it was 20 years away. And so here we are, and we're still speaking about autonomous vehicles. And it seems like it's 20 years away again. Now, 10 years ago, many of you know that I was saying we are going to be experiencing autonomous vehicles, self-driving cars. Well, sadly, I have to report that I still think we're 20 years away. So, Mr. O'Hanlon, you can now remove your earmuffs. And Mr. O'Hanlon and I, we are friends. Based on the strength of our friendship, I can say this because we have a preview before every CAC meeting. Second point that's made is, since we started investing in technology and transportation some 30 years ago, we have spent as much money on the interstate system. And what do we have? So that's just to give you a comparison. At least with the investment in the interstate system, we have roadways. So what do we have with the technology? And then lastly, that's related to that point, is we need to be mindful of what benefits we're deriving from these investments. Now, confession is good for the soul, and as someone who has advocated for this in transportation for most of my career, we need to start to show the benefits that this is truly something that's going to improve mobility and safety. And on the backside, we need to be mindful of the impacts. Every time you make these investments, someone's losing. Now, that may be in fact that you're losing mobility and safety, or it may be the case where we experience a unicorn like Uber or Lyft that just changes the whole dynamics. So again, just wanted to regale you. Now I will get to pretty much what I want to speak about, and that is just updating you on where we are with this master plan and specifically the needs assessment portion of it. So we've had several meetings. We have a steering committee. This project is being managed by Kimberly Horn. Jim Woods is with me this morning. Here are the meetings we've had. The framework that we're using, again, we're at needs assessment. And the whole the vision here is that as we complete this, the work we complete will flow into the update of our long-range transportation plan. Excuse me. Again, the needs assessment, we are relying on our steering committee to help us with this. We looked at existing conditions. There's a regional intelligent transportation systems architecture that describes how the sausage is made. And then we've done interviews with all the agencies. We've identified a gap analysis, excuse me, desired outcomes and the status. And we've broken it down into infrastructure and systems, strategies and operations, agency and organization. So under infrastructure and systems, we want to look at how we are assessing system performance. Again, what's based in Autonorama. We need to start assessing how well we're doing. Traffic signals, this is one of the programs that we've been using, doing here at Metro Plan Atlanta for almost 15 years. It's been a very positive program, but that's evolving and we need to evolve with it. Preemption and priority, that's where we give more time to like transit vehicles to move through the intersections. It's also being used for emergency management system vehicles, as well as, this is a nuance in the industry, for freight vehicles. Transit technology is more what's in transit vehicles and how transit systems are operated. And then lastly, something that's near and dear to most of us here is pedestrian and bicycles and how they are interacting with vehicles and how we can use the technology wearable technologies, and connected vehicle technologies to improve safety. So this is just a series of graphics showing where we identified the gaps, fiber gaps, TISMO device gaps, where we need to make investments. This is Orange County, Osceola County, Seminole County, and the city of Orlando. And this presentation is available to you. I know I'm going fast, but it's available, Mr. Chairman, if you want to share with the members. Under strategies and operations, we're encouraging our TISMO committee members to do a better job or improve project scoping. What we're speaking to here mostly is about leveraging existing investments so that as we can layer the future technology investments on what already exists. Again, that whole idea of looking at performance versus investments, training for staff, because we are entering an era where some of the seasoned employees are starting to migrate out. So a new cadre of employees are coming in. So we want to train them and make sure they're up to date on the newest technology. Collaboration, which we do a lot of. So we want to do more of that. And interoperability, where we can take work that's being done in Osceola County and use it in Seminole County. Agency and organization, development of the workforce. And the last one is awareness. And that is telling our story. We need to do a better job of making sure our decision makers understand what TISMO is about, how it can be used, and also just making sure that we don't oversell it. You know, there is that tendency in the industry to oversell it. And that's been something that I've been keen on whenever I speak about TISMO. This is a draft prioritization criteria we're using. It's similar to the last long range or metropolitan transportation plan. It is draft, is being refined, and that is the next step in our work that we will be doing. Again, next steps are the draft prioritization approach. We'll refine that. We'll look at piloting that prioritization process and then developing a framework for strategies that our steering committee members can use. And our next steering committee meeting is on August the 8th at 1:30 in this room. Mr. Chairman, I try to do it as fast as I
You did
could.
great.
You know, I
You did
started.
fantastic.
I start.
Thank you. Thank you, yes.
And we can share this.
Listen, he can share this.
I will share.
So we can share this, and then if we have other questions, we will send them back for you. But thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Great job. Okay. Our next in-person CAC meeting will be August 23rd of this year. We do not meet in July, so we'll be on summer break, right? Summer break. And the CAC meeting dates throughout the rest of the year is, of course, in your agenda packets. Please remember to RSVP. This is very important that we know that we're going to have a quorum when we're coming together, okay? The next Metro Plan Orlando board meeting will be on July 12th, and I will, of course, take our concerns forward at that point. And that meeting is at 8 a.m. if someone wants to attend or watch that meeting. It's going in earlier, okay? At this time, would any committee members like to make a final comment? Mr. O'Hanlon. Excuse me?
3 quick items. The governor's office was supposed to allocate like $1 billion worth of transportation funds. Did Central Florida get some of those funds? Anybody have an update on that?
Very quickly. So 4 of the $7 billion were appropriated. We're still waiting final feedback from Tallahassee on what the particular projects and the timeline for those.
Okay,
So they're not in the current tip. As soon as we hear word, we'll be updating our documents accordingly.
great. We'll pray.
Do you have another one?
I have 3. So second one is, I was in Tennessee and I had to rent a car. I had a brand new Camry with advanced state-of-the-art self-driving in a Camry. And I can understand why all you guys think self-driving is not coming. That car just scared the bejeebus out of me. You go around a freaking turn, the car says, you're going over the line. No, I'm not. You're driving. Move over. I thought the cars are unbelievably stupid compared to a Tesla. Okay, so the third item is, I want to know how we start planning, for the sake of argument, about buying maybe 1,000 robo buses to implement them through Central Florida so that when we can buy these buses, we can actually get started using them. I want Central Florida to be first or one of the first to start using this unbelievable technology that's coming here. Okay, and somewhere we've got to get this process started. And in addition, an unconfirmed source said they sold one of these 12-passenger robo buses in Las Vegas, which would make sense because Elon probably is going to put them in his boring tunnels first before he distributes them to everybody else. So this is coming. Somehow we got to start preparing for this. Thank
Mr.
you.
Neal.
I'll be brief, Mr. Chairman. I know that we're short on time. So, autonomous vehicles, self-driving is here, according to Mr. O'Hanlon. It's 20 years away, according to you. But I'm not here to talk about that. I want to talk about micromobility devices. And I guarantee you that there's not going to be any autonomous micromobility devices with a person standing on a scooter. Okay, so, but it's here. Okay, and we got to stop talking about bicycle and pedestrians, because it's not bicycles anymore. It's micromobility bicycles, scooters, skateboards, you name it, they're on the road, they're electrified, they're moving, and so we've got to change that perception that this is all about bicycles, because bicycles are becoming a small part of the micromobility movement and the way that people are moving on these things. So when I started on this committee, I started on the bicycle committee. It was just bicycle. There wasn't anything else. Then we merged into this one, and at UCF, I worked for UCF, it was bicycles. We put in these line bikes. The student wanted spin scooter shared program, so they went to scooters. Now it's all scooters. So I'm just spreading the word. Please spread the word. Bicycles are not it anymore. It's bicycles, micromobility. Okay, that's it. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have anyone joining us virtually who would like to make a comment?
I see no hands up on the virtual side, Mr. Chairman.
Were there any written comments before the meeting?
I have not received any written comments.
On the speaker's side, do we have any other comments that need to be made? Okay, with that, as always, I want to say thank you to the entire team here at Metro Plan. Thank you to our guests. And of course, thank you to our members here. And when I tell you, it's not me just wanting to rush you through this. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. We're supposed to get done in 2 hours or 11:30. And often, we start to lose people because they can't stay. So I want everyone to be able to ask their questions and get responses to them. But it's just a thing of respect that I want to make sure everyone gets in this process. Okay. With that, I will say that we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Great job.
Yeah, I know.
See you later. Take care. Hard day. Have to be a people that's
Take your posters.
Did I miss a